Please welcome to the stage Suzanne Wilson Heckenberg, President of the Intelligence and National Security Alliance.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us for this special event. I hope you all enjoyed the coffee reception. Today, we are delighted to honor the Honorable Charlie Allen. Charlie embodies all that is good about our community. There is nobody more dedicated, patriotic, and mission-driven than Charlie. On a personal note, when I started at INSA a little over a decade ago, about 12 and a half years to be exact, Charlie served as an ally and a champion for me. From the start, Charlie was there to offer a helping hand. And over the years, I have been able to turn to him for needed insights and at times, some of the really colored backstories that Charlie has shared. As I know he has shared many of those with you all in the past, and I think maybe he'll be sharing some of those today. I hope many of you in the room have had similar experiences. It's an absolute honor to celebrate him. Charlie, I know our audience looks forward to hearing your reflections as well as your thoughts about some of the current challenges and opportunities within the intelligence community. Briefly, I would like to thank our sponsors who are here today and whose support makes this event possible. Ariel Secure Technologies, Cleveland Electric Laboratories, Ernst & Young, Lockheed Martin, Fearson, Quadrant, Raytheon Intelligence and Space, SAIC, Sims Software, and Strongbox Cyber Solutions. Everybody could join me in a round of applause. And also a special thanks to the Spy Museum and the Hayden Center for being supporting sponsors for this morning's breakfast. Now, before we break for breakfast, we have a special guest here who wants to say a few words about Charlie. Please join me in welcoming Principal Deputy Director of National Intelligence, Stacy Dixon, to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. I am really excited to be here. I just wanted to say a couple of things. Unlike most people in this room, I actually became aware of the Honorable Charlie Allen when he moved over to DHS. Sitting across from him, watching him hold court as I was a staffer on the House Intel Committee, watching him there was really inspiring. Second careers is what I sort of consider that as, but second careers are usually passion projects. But who takes on a passion project after a 47-year career at CIA, joining an organization that is made up of 22 different other organizations to create the intelligence apparatus? Charlie Allen, that's who. Charlie, I don't know how you did it, I don't know why you did it, but we are glad you did it, because it was it's so good for our community to have your knowledge and experience there. So on behalf of Odie and I wanted to say thank you for your 23,725 hours of service, your work at CIA as Assistant Director of Central Intelligence for Collection, as National Intelligence Officer for Warning, as National Intelligence Officer for CT. Those jobs and many other roles form the foundation for what became the Odie and I, and for that we are truly grateful. So I don't have a glass here, but I would love for everyone to raise a glass of coffee or water, whatever you have, to the Honorable Charlie Allen. Charlie, thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Dixon, for opening the program. If you all want to enjoy your breakfast, please do so, and we'll resume things in around 20 minutes. Thanks so much.
Please welcome back to the stage Suzanne Wilson Heckenberg.
Thank you. It's so much easier to quiet people over coffee versus cocktails. So I would like to thank Charlie for being a morning person and thank the attendees as well. I hope everyone enjoyed your meal. It's now my pleasure to welcome to the stage Tom Ritchie, who serves on INSA's advisory committee and is the Vice President for Requirements and Capabilities at Raytheon Intelligence and Space. He is going to introduce this morning's fireside chat.
Good morning, everyone. It is really my pleasure first to thank Suzanne for the introduction. And I just have to say, as you look around, INSA has really put on quite an event in honor of these two distinguished folks, and certainly the Honorable Charlie Allen. So thank you very much, INSA. It's a little daunting, actually, to be up here introducing these two leaders. Our moderator, Tish Long's accomplishments are many. We all, I think, probably know these, but I'm going to say them nevertheless. Served as director of the NGA, deputy director of the DIA, principal deputy undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, and deputy director of Naval Intelligence. Thank you, Tish, for being here this morning and leading this conversation. Further, and as we've heard from others, Charlie Allen's 6 decades of service are really incredible. His substantial expertise and insights to some of our nation's most pressing challenges, from the Cuban Missile Crisis to the return of the great power competition. His career spans some of the most consequential moments in our nation's history, such as when I had the first opportunity to meet with him when he stood up OHS in the Intelligence Analysis Division, and I was an active duty Coast Guard officer and had the privilege of serving under his leadership, and I'll never forget it. And so he'll be talking about that this morning. His work ethic is without equal. It's been repeated often, if you don't think you're getting your money's worth out of the federal government, you haven't met Charlie Allen.
Yeah.
So on behalf of Raytheon Intelligence and Space, we are thrilled to be able to celebrate his storied career. Tish and Charlie, thank you both for being here. I look forward to the conversation. So thank you.
Thank you. So Tom, thank you very much for that kind introduction. Charlie, you know, Tom actually didn't talk about all my jobs. One in particular where we worked together.
We worked together.
You were the ADCI for Collection, the Assistant Director of Central Intelligence for Collection, and I was the Executive Director for Intelligence Community Affairs, AKA the Community Staff Director. We had the good fortune to work with Joan Dempsey, with George Tennant, who is here with us this morning. Thank you, George, for being here. And Joan, unfortunately, could not be with us this morning, Charlie. So I'd like to read something that she sent to me. And she says, shortly after I was confirmed as the DDC-ICM, Deputy Director of Central Intelligence for Community Management, George Tennant called me in and told me he wanted me to make Charlie the ADCI for Collection. I think I literally groaned. Laugh.
Probably.
I only knew Charlie by reputation, but what a reputation it was. Irascible, yes, uncompromising, and indefatigably bullheaded. I knew I was going to
Guilty as charged.
Yeah. She says, I knew I was going to spend a lot of time dealing with issues that Charlie created. And I did, and I would do it all over again. Charlie and I worked together for 5 years, which some days felt like a life sentence.
True.
But Charlie started every day with the singular focus of making the community better and our country safer. And if he had to break China to do it, he broke China. He broke a lot of China.
I sure did.
But no one in the history of our community has done more for this nation. Charlie, you know I love you, and I wish I could be with you today for this much-deserved recognition of your lifetime of extraordinary service. From So I thought that was a great way to start. We're going to have a little fireside chat here. There are these things, cards at your table, if you have any questions. I've already been handed a number of questions. And of course, Charlie, chair's prerogative, I have
Right.
my own questions.
All right.
So, as Joan said, as Tom said, speaking of a lifetime of service, 65 years. That's 6.5 decades, not 6 decades, but you know, who's counting? It really is quite a tenure. Now, to put it in perspective for the audience, Eisenhower was president when you had your first PDB briefing. So not when Charlie started, but when he had his first PDB briefing. What was that like? And then how has the PDB evolved? I'm sure you've been in the Oval a lot of times.
A few times, but the PDB started as a one-pager that Dick Lehman, famed CIA officer, thought about. He wanted a PDB that would be one page, that would hit the highlights for the president, because Eisenhower was a very busy man. He liked things military style. But it has evolved a number of times. In fact, I ran an office that put to bed the PDB every night. Did that for about a year before I got caught up in another compartmented White House program. And it has changed. It really does convey to the President of the United States the best we have to offer. And whether it's under George Tenet or under anyone else, and today for Bill Burns, with Morgan Muir, I guess, helping honcho it each day to the Oval Office, it really does give you that decided edge that Mike Vickers always talks about, and Mike is on a book tour. It gives you that wonderful picture of the world. We collect and analyze, and we do covert action, or we do actions as directed by the president, which could go through a fairly rigorous process before they're approved. But in my view, the PDB is the apex of what we do, and it really does inform. As Sherman Kent said, who ran the Board of National Estimates, is to raise the level of discussion in Washington. You like to say that, but it really did. It really is good, and it serves Bill Burns well, and it serves the president, and it serves the policy level well. And the one thing that I was told when I came into CIA, we don't make policy, and I always stuck by that. We inform policy so decisions can be made.
So that's a great segue, fascinating, and I think a really good description of the president's daily brief to really give the president and our country an edge. But a good segue, because you talked about when you came into CIA. So, I mean, Charlie's work ethic it's just mythic. I mean, I used to try and get in before you. It was impossible. Since we've retired, Charlie, I'll meet you for breakfast. What time? 6:30. Great. I'm a morning person. I get there, Charlie's been there for an hour already. There's no beating Charlie. So, did you have that work ethic from the day you walked into CIA?
I walked into CIA after waiting a year for my clearance, and when and trying to get through the polygraph of 1958. But I did that. I went home and told Kay, my wife, that I don't know whether I have a job or not. I just went through a horrendous afternoon on something called the polygraph, and it was. But they then gave me an offer, so I came to work. I was a GS5, and it was nirvana. I felt I was in heaven. I had arrived. I had a job. I had responsibility, and right from the first, it was to keep the country safe, to do what had to be done to keep the country safe, and that means sometimes leaping over obstacles to get it done. And I'm sorry I did that to Joan now and then, but and to George too. And it was sort of amazing. It was a great experience. A CIA officer today entering on duty, it's a very different process, but the mission remains the same. It is to help keep the country safe and to recognize that we have to do bold and brave things if we're going to do that. We have to have advanced technology. And boy, do we have a lot of work to do there. I know Bill Burns is trying hard, but there's so much more that needs to be done. We got to have big efforts. We did the U-2 in 9 months. We did the SR-71 Blackbird in 16 months. We can do these things. There's all kinds of wisdom at CIA and the rest of the community. And I worked the community as very broadly when I became the NIO for warning, and when I came to the NIO for counterterrorism, for working directly for Bill Casey. These were big, exciting days. And the whole idea in 1991, when President Reagan was elected, we suddenly got $1 trillion in defense buildup. And I drove out of CIA headquarters that day saying, that means a lot of money for intelligence. We're going to win this bloody war with the Soviet Union. I felt good. I felt my heart was warm, let's put it that way.
Well, and we did a lot of good, Charlie. I took the lid off your water already. I don't want you to spill that on you. And there's a lot more secret programs that we worked on together that we can't talk about
We'll
here.
never talk about them.
So you've seen a lot, you've done a lot. And we're going to get to some of those other jobs. But again, so you had that work ethic when you walked in the door.
Oh, yes.
That there is someone
A lot
here.
better than rural North Carolina.
Well, speaking of, there is someone here who's known to work some pretty mythic hours as well, and she has a few words.
I'm coming up this way.
Okay. Miss Sue Gordon. Now, if anyone knows Sue Gordon, they know
Go
she's
Heels.
a dookie.
So I do have a few words, but I actually thought if there was anything I could do that would let you know how I feel about you and who you are, not only am I wearing one, I paid money.
You bought it.
I did, for you. So just a couple things, because there are a lot of people who want to talk. Number one is our reason for our ethic is different. You wanted to say to the world I was half as smart, so I had to work twice as hard. But really, I always consider myself an incredibly lucky woman. I'm certainly lucky in love. I was lucky that the CIA hired me. And I was lucky that my 43 years intersected 2/3 of yours. I started the CIA when our founders were my bosses, when the icons were the people that taught me. And Charlie, not only did you teach me when I was a pup, you taught me to come with my socks up every day because I couldn't get where I wanted to go without going through you. But then when I was a boss, you told me how to set a standard. When I was at the top of the intelligence community, you taught me what was really important. And now that I'm in the private sector, we conspire together to advance the cause. You are everything. You have been forever. And it is my delight that I have never been an adult without this man. So, not only do I honor you with my shirt, but we honor you with your own Carolina jersey, with the only number that's appropriate.
Oh, Charlie.
Oh, amazing. I am so amazed. Unbelievable.
Charlie, yeah.
Yeah, because he wants the picture of me in my damn Carolina shirt.
Yeah, you're damn right. I've waited for that.
Sue, wonderful.
I love you. I love you so much. So much to do.
You got it, Charlie. All right. Wow, that was pretty special.
That is.
That's-
Sue Gordon wearing a North
Sue-
Carolina shirt.
And we have pictures.
That's good. We'll keep those.
Okay.
Put those in the CIA museum.
Well, well, that was a pivotal moment, which brings me to my next question.
Yes.
You've served under 13 CIA directors.
Yes.
13. That's
I
a lucky number.
With
A lucky
a guy
number.
named Dulles.
A guy named
And
Dulles.
my last was on 11 July 2004, was under George J. Tenet.
So there must have been some pivotal moments.
They're
You want
great.
to talk about a few? That you can talk about in this room?
Yeah, and I was in leadership analysis, and in October '62, my phone rang on a Friday afternoon, and it was the Deputy Director of Intelligence on the Gray Line, and he said, "This is R. Jack Smith. You'll come to work this weekend." I'd never talked to the Deputy Director of Intelligence in my life. It was like God calling. And it was really disturbed me. But I came to work the next day, and the next day, worked the weekend, and we did name traces. A lot of it seemed like rocket scientists. We knew something big was up, and Kennedy gave a speech at 1900 hours on Monday, and we went to DEFCON 3, I guess. And the SS-4s and SS-5s had been introduced into Cuba, and they were being rapidly assembled and fueled, and the warhead vans were already there. So John McCone was a great hero at the time. It was a DCI, and that was a great moment. And then I was thrown on the task force. We planned the next government of Cuba. We picked the whole cabinet, and we had the first tier, second tier, third tier candidates for it. So it was, and then on Sunday morning when the FBIS ticker started coming out of Moscow task, it was clear that this incredible crisis, which went on for 13 days, was over. But we were at a hair trigger. There's no question. We were at a hair trigger of a nuclear weapon. We all came to work. No one stayed away. The 82nd Airborne was ready to jump into Cuba, and CIA officers with them. It wasn't CIA's officers' choice so much, but we were really going to do it, and it was a great experience. That's just one highlight. You fast forward to 7-8 November 1983. Does anyone know what happened on 7-8? Have you ever heard of Able Archer? We had so pushed, because Ronald Reagan came in and he says, it's not containment, it's pushback. And we did some things that I thought were pretty risky under the Reagan administration, but they won. We won, and that was when we put the air armies in East Germany and Poland uploaded their tactical nuclear weapons, were ready to strike NATO. Our worldwide exercises and our activities in a time of shaky leadership within the Politburo has so shaken the Soviet Union that it was a dangerous time. We had put, in 1983, we had put tactical nuclear weapons on high alert in East Germany with Russian pilots ready to fly to NATO targets throughout Western Europe. So there were some great moments. The great moments, of course, was the fact that we were working hard together in 2000 because Al-Qaeda was a focus after blowing away our embassies in 1998. We have some people who worked those days for me, and we have incredible people that worked hard day and night. And the one thing we did have under George was we had a plan to take down Al-Qaeda and to strike back because we feared our embassy or our Fifth Fleet. We really buttoned up the Middle East. We didn't button up this country because it was not, we dealt in foreign intelligence. The FBI's job was to deal in domestic intelligence. There's a bright red line down, and suddenly September the 11th struck. And the one organization that had a detailed plan on how to deal with Al-Qaeda was CIA. And George W. Bush at Camp David, went with a CIA plan. On 11 October 2001, we struck back with a team on the ground in Tajikistan, or in the Panjshir Valley. It was a great time.
So those are just 3 small examples. Think of what Charlie has lived through, worked on, and been just a major part of.
Well, thank God for Buzzy Krongrad.
Buzzy.
And thank God for Tennant carrying the water with us in that critical meeting at Camp David, because we instantly we're going to strike back. I was ready to strike back earlier, but
But you got to do a little planning, Charlie.
yeah, and drop some hellfires, but
Yeah.
we had to do a little planning. You know.
Well, speaking of DCI tenant, I believe he would like to say a few words. George?
This is on? Yeah. Tish, I want to tell you, you've made my morning in hearing the fact that Joan groaned after that phone call. It was a brilliant move on the part of the director at the time. That's all I can say. Charlie, we have a lot of luminaries in the room, former directors, deputy directors from the ODNI's office, CIA. Everybody in this room would categorically say, you have been the indispensable man of American intelligence for all your years, and we thank you. If in modern parlance, you're your own large language model, and you know, I don't think ChatGPT or anybody could clone you, but I wish they could, because I remember when you retired, I remember thinking, how many people is it going to take to replace Charlie Allen? Probably hundreds. You and I first met in 1987. I got a call from Charlie. This was at the time of the Iran-Contra affair. And sort of, he's on the phone in a muffled voice, would you meet me at Union Station? I can't really come to your office. So we had this clandestine meeting at Union Station together. Since I don't remember what we talked about, but I do remember taking many, many notes on what you told me. It was my first encounter with you, and it was sort of like out of a John le Carré novel. I thought, who the hell is this guy? It was damn interesting. You know, when we think of Charlie, my next encounter with you, you're the NIO for Warning. And you used to come in either with John Brennan or after John Brennan on Fridays to see me. And I'll never forget red, yellow, green, green, yellow, red. You scared the living bejesus out of me before every weekend. But I learned about Warning from you. We kind of fast forward to your ADCI for collection years. Few people understand that Charlie really was the intellectual impetus for our pursuit of hard targets. The belief that there were some things that were much more important than anything else. The belief that we had to perform and could not fail against those targets. And what Charlie did was push and shove and drive the community not to only think of the inbox, but also to think about the future, 10, 15 years forward. He was a force of nature in those years. I remember traveling overseas. Our foreign counterparts loved you, Charlie, and I'd go to American military installations. And I thought I'd sort of, they'd put my talking points in and say, tell them to do this, 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 and this. And people would say, well, Mr. Director, Mr. Allen has already been here. He has told us what to do. And of course, they needed, when you left, the Wheels Up party was pretty long, and they had a good time because you just wore everybody out all over the world. But they loved you for it, Charlie. You mentioned, one more example, you mentioned the war on terrorism. What few people don't understand is beginning in 1998, what Charlie did was he used to integrate collection with Code for Black's operational planning because we were looking at Afghanistan and all the major operational hubs in the rest of the world. So by game day, when we got all the authorities we needed, Afghanistan was riddled and covered with collection assets inside and outside the country. We had already made enormous contacts inside the country. Charlie, you were the unsung hero of what was, I think, our finest hour. And all of us thank you for it. And by the way, very few people know the story. And all the people that wrote all the reports never came and talked to you about it. But in any event, that's okay. Charlie, everybody in this room loves you. Everybody in this room would do anything for you and follow you to the ends of the earth. And I know on behalf of all of my colleagues and all the directors and deputy directors who are here, we have never had a better colleague or a better friend. God bless you, Charlie Allen.
Thank you, George. So very well said. I know, so heartfelt and so true, Charlie. I mean, look at how many people came out for breakfast.
Yeah, at this hour. It's pretty late, but that's okay.
Of course it is. It's time for lunch, and Charlie's calendar. We now have another very special message. It is a video message from one of our former presidents.
Wow.
Charlie, I'm so glad to join in congratulating you on 65 years of extraordinary service in the intelligence community. Throughout your storied career, you've played an important role in protecting our national security. And I will personally always be grateful for your fine work at the CIA when I was president, including as Assistant Director of Central Intelligence for Collection. While most Americans will never know the true value of your service, on behalf of all those you've kept safe through your tireless efforts, I want to say thanks. Thank you. You deserve a great celebration, and I hope you have it. And I wish we had you for 64 more years. That would bring us to 129. Then maybe I could provide the rest.
So, Charlie, sorry you couldn't see the video. We do have that for you.
Okay.
So, President Clinton, we asked and he said absolutely. He was right there at the top of the list. So we do have that for you. We also have a letter for you from CIA Director Burns.
Oh.
And I'll just paraphrase a little bit of it, and then we have it packaged for you.
Okay.
Charlie, whenever your name is mentioned in the halls of Langley, the word legend soon follows. He goes on to say, I've heard more than one officer say that a highlight of their career was having the opportunity to serve with Charlie Allen. To me, that is the mark of a truly exceptional career and a genuinely decent man. So, Charlie, again, well done. Now, George talked a little bit about warning, and certainly a challenge that we have had as a community is that we really don't have either a systemic or systematic way of providing warning. You were the NIO. You did a lot to advance that. You have more than a vested interest in this topic. So I'm curious, and you and I have had this conversation a fair number of times. How do you think we ought to be approaching strategic warning right now, and who should own that process?
The director, the DNI really owns it. And within the DNI, I believe the chair of the National Intelligence Council, because there's where all the NIOs are. We do not have an NIO for warning. We do need I think, a centralizing focus, someone who is an NIO for warning, who can report, but who can cut across all the NIOs, functional and geographic, and do the job. I like the idea of having national mission managers, which is Jim Clapper helped form that idea. I think that can be worked together, and there could be greater integration. And I think we have come a long way, because let's face it, this administration in February 22 gave warning of war to our NATO allies. Not all of them believed us. We gave warning of war to Ukraine. And let it say that not everybody in Zelensky's camp believed us either, that they would be attacked. And then we gave warning of war. We gave warning of attack late in the game, and there was a lot of convincing. I was at an INSA event with Scott Barrier, and Scotty really is working on warning, and he's thinking strategically about it long term. We've got Michael Studeman here who keeps talking about operational warning. We've never defined that. There's so much work to be done by the community, led by the DNI, led by DCIA, led by Nakasone out at NSA. There's a lot more we could be doing than we are not doing. But we have to be able to not be surprised, to be there. For example, when September 11th, as I said earlier, CIA had a plan. No one else had a plan. DOD did not have a plan. And that didn't make Rumsfeld very happy, but they didn't have the plan. We had the plan. We implemented the plan. The Taliban went down, but we went after the Al-Qaeda, the leadership, to get after the Shura. And we did that. And that's pretty amazing. So we are in a new world where we're with quantum computing, with 5G, with the speed of AI, ML. And thank God we have an AI, ML effort. It started in 2017 by Sue Gordon. And the way of the future is the way Sue thinks. And at the time, we did not have an initiative. But we have a strong initiative. We have a lot of reasons for the private sector and the government work together on this whole new exotic future that we have. And we need big efforts in this area. And we're working on a lot of aspects, but we need to demonstrate that we can do more than advanced analytics. We can actually do AI, ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning. We've got to do this. We got to think big. We got to think a decade ahead to stay up with the warning. Otherwise, our adversaries will pass us once again, and we cannot go through these cycles again. Where, as Jim Clapper said, it's the most dangerous time I've seen. Jim's been out of office for 3, 4, or 5 years. It's even more dangerous. There are more snakes in the garden. They've grown bigger and more vicious and more dangerous. And unless we are really ready to work together with industry and with advanced technologies, and this is something we all should come together as a nation and not only worry about the divisions that separate us, but we got to worry about what brings us together, our common ground, and find that common ground and drive through it and think about the future. George made a lot of big calls and relating to technology, and Sue's made big calls, and we've advanced. We've got work to do.
But we have advanced. So Stacy, I hope you were taking notes. A couple of tasks there for the D&I's office, and everyone sitting here. We all have a part to play. Industry does so much for the community. Absolutely. In what you develop, and certainly Charlie just ticked off quantum computing, artificial intelligence, machine learning. And I love you saying, find the common ground. Right. I think most everybody in this room can do that easily. We need to help the rest of the country.
We used to lead the world in material science. China has great material science. We've got to continue to push ahead and be the world leader in material science. In pharmaceuticals, China makes all the basic ingredients for all antibiotics in the world. They're not made here, they're made in China. Some in India, but mostly in China. And we've really got to wake up, and wake up now, today.
Well, if there was any lining to the pandemic, I think we learned a lot about supply chains and how much we had offshored and what we need to bring back. So great words there, Charlie. I'm getting some more good questions, but I have a couple more of my own first. Let's move to your tenure at DHS.
Yes.
We heard Stacy talk about who takes on a job like that sort of at the very end of their career. But you did. You were the first Undersecretary for Intelligence and Analysis. Yeah. And I'd like to say thank you to Secretary Chertoff for being here this morning. Michael, great to see you. Talk to us about that time. What are you most proud of as being the first? And I personally, and I bet a lot of people in this room would like to know, how is the culture different between DHS and CIA?
Well, the culture was extraordinarily different because it's such a diverse department, having so many aspects to it, and trying to pull it together. Secretary Chertoff, Michael Jackson, and then later Paul Snyder, was deputy. The problem was it's extremely diverse. One thing we had to center on after being interviewed by Secretary Chertoff, he only talked to me about 15 minutes and said, "We want you to come aboard." So I was very persuasive. He says, "Your job is to keep dangerous people out. Your job is to keep dangerous materials out of our country. And thirdly, you've got to learn how to bring in the state and local governments and share information with them that we have, because we have big databases.
Other than that, what were you supposed to do?
I don't know. It seemed like a good start, and we went rolling off. And we have Melissa Smyslova here. Who was
Yes,
with me at
Melissa,
the
thank you
time.
for being here.
And we love Melissa and what she gave to this. So we started writing our own publications. We had brought in Booz Allen, I believe, to evaluate our products. And after a year and a half, we looked pretty good with the rest of the community. We trained people. We had Kathy Fearson and her team there doing a lot of training of officers who had never been analytic, to think in analytic terms. And Kathy and Fearson Associates did a great job for me. I was very pleased with that. And sharing with state and local governments, and with chiefs of police of major cities. Great. I worked with Bill Bratton, worked closely with Ray Kelly at New York and Los Angeles, and we started platooning people out to fusion centers all over the country. I had 40 officers in fusion centers by the time I left in January 2009. That was pretty phenomenal, getting those people out, helping state and local fusion centers. And I was given huge authority by Secretary Chertoff. We started loaning secure equipment to Disney and other places because Disney was on the list of being struck. And I didn't hesitate. I finally told the Secretary I was doing all this with a private secretary, and I said, I'm doing it with lawyers. He says, we'll get the stuff back someday, won't we? And I said, yes. He said, fine. So that was the end of the story. I wasn't sure what authorities I had to give secure phones left and right, but we gave them to Bloomberg in New York. And we built a top secret SCI facility for Ray Kelly at police headquarters. And
You were doing the right thing. Absolutely.
We took chances and we did the right thing. And it never got any. And Secretary Chertoff was forever dedicated to the goals that he set forth, and we worked very hard to do it because those days we were fearful of anthrax and Christ. Excuse my language. We had to take it very seriously, and there were plenty of threats, and we were able to do this. And Secretary Chertoff was fantastic to work with and work for. He had this great memory. He said, remember the threat we got 3 months ago? I found that you had to have a list in your mind at all times so you could report on something. And I'd say, well, that one petered out. We don't have to worry anymore. He said, fine. But he had an amazing capacity. And we worked hard. And we worked with the Bureau. We didn't work against the Bureau. We worked with the Bureau. And thanks to Bob Mueller, John Pistol, we really did good things at working with the Bureau.
Absolutely. And there's someone who would like to recognize that. So I'm pleased to share another letter. This one is from President Bush.
Whoa.
Laura and I congratulate you as you celebrate your 65th year of service to our nation. Thank you for all you have done throughout your remarkable career. I am grateful for your tireless work to help make our country and our world a safer place for future generations. And there's more there, and we have that letter for you as well, Charlie.
He was very good.
Now, yes, thank you. We, believe it or not, we are winding down here. Let's talk about your time after government.
Right?
So one of the things, as was noted earlier, you have served as INSA's chair for the Security Policy Reform Council since its inception, more than a decade ago. I think it was your memory of your first polygraph and getting through that year-long security clearance process that asked you to lead this effort. Your council co-chair, Kathy Fairson, is here today, and she'd like to share a few words.
Well, Kathy means a lot.
Kathy.
Hi, Charlie. Over here. Other side,
over here.
over
Oh,
here.
there you are.
How time flies. I mean, I remember when, it seems like yesterday, that it was 50 years that Charlie had in federal service. And imagine how startled I was realizing what I was going to say today, that last week I passed 50 years of having entered the doors of CIA. Now, that all goes to show that anybody can do 50 years. 65 years is a Charlie Allen kind of accomplishment. Now, how many people here have worked with Charlie in government? Hold up your hands. Look at that, Charlie. How many people have worked with Charlie in INSA? I think it all goes to show that almost everybody's worked with Charlie, and if you haven't, you wanted to. And Charlie's everywhere. You know, he is a walking history lesson, but he's always looking to write the next chapter. And you've already heard that in what he said today. But you know, Charlie, not everything that you've done has had a lasting success. I mean, I'm thinking of things like the Integrated Concepts Development Office in the D&I that was coming up with inventive collection strategies in very short time. Randy was reminding me last night that you all put together a strategic warning, an interagency strategic warning process that really doesn't exist quite the same way today. And look at the professionalism that you brought to DHS and to INA. Now, what you've done is that you don't give up, and you remind us that we need to keep pushing, and you set an example for leading, for working hard, and for being constructive. So, you know, you're the only person I know who makes a difference just by being there. I think back to when I was heading the Center for Evaluation before the D&I, and you were there when we were trying in the early 90s to get a cleared American IC presence in U.S. embassies after the fall of the Soviet Union. Because you were there with us and you went with us to Congress, your gravitas made that happen. And you taught me that not only can agencies and even Congress work together, but we can make change in security. So I remember running into you at DHS as we were trying to get, you know, people with long IC clearances cleared and into the process. There was a lot of work to be done in tradecraft development. And I ran into Charlie and I thought, well, you know, Charlie can solve everything, right? And Charlie was, you were probably 100 times more frustrated than I was, and that was a lot, because you couldn't even get the support that you wanted for your front office. So it's no surprise that when Charlie became an INSA advisor, that the first thing he wanted to do was to say, I want to have a security task force. And I think the call went out. We probably had 4 or 5 dozen people who wanted to work on this task force, and you selected a couple dozen. I'm very proud that I was one of those. And it took us about a year. We published our first paper in December of 2011, Next Steps in Security Policy Reform. And Chuck Alsop called us the little task force that could. And soon afterwards, he made us a council, the Security Policy Reform Council. And so under Charlie's leadership, we take on issues in different ways than other associations. We don't just identify the problem, we work with government, and we try to come up with outcomes that work for industry and for government. Matt Eanes, the head of the Performance Accountability Council Program Management Office, last week in a phone call with some of our folks, said that it is the INSA SPRC whose insights have been included in Trusted Workforce 2.0. Hill staffers, GAO, come to us for some of our advice and insights, and a lot of this is because Charlie Allen is our leader. Yet at the same time, we have so much more to be done. You could publish the paper that we published in 2011 today, and most of those recommendations are as apt today as they were then. That includes the gap between security and acquisitions. It includes inconsistent application of security policies. inefficient use of skiffs, and of course, the polygraph taking a long time to get through. But we are so grateful that Charlie is there. He is pounding the table every month at our meetings, and he reminds us that we have to keep pushing to make security make sense in the interest of our nation. So we thank you, Charlie. We thank you for being there for us. We thank you for being our leader, for being our role model, for being our conscience, and being our friend.
So Charlie at 65 years, Kathy, you were working with him at 40 and now 50 years. We received pins at the same time. I remember George coming down from the 7th floor down to us on the 6th floor, and made a big deal of presenting me my 20-year pin, and then he threw Charlie his 40-year pin and said,
Yeah, I caught it.
Thanks, catch it, which you did, you caught it. Now, I wasn't going to say how many years it's been, but I guess you can do the math. Charlie, we have all learned so much from you. I mean, I think everyone in this room probably has a story of advice rendered, sitting at the feet of, just learning by observing. And there is someone here today who would like to talk about the impact you have made on them and that you made early in their career. Admiral Studeman.
Charlie, good to see you again. You're as chipper as ever. So I met Charlie when I was coming off of 7th Fleet staff. I was a commander at the time, and he was the ADCI for collections, and we had a problem tracking Chinese submarines, and the community was very hard-pressed to really get after it. And Charlie was one of the few people that was actually prepared to listen, and as you can imagine, when we presented the problem to him, he started issuing directives and tasks and started to get after it with the amount of energy that nobody else had applied up to that point in time. I was very impressed there as he worked the China Hard Targets account. I didn't know how our paths would cross in the future, but it came to me a couple of years later. I was at the Department of Homeland Security. I was assigned there as a White House fellow. I was a commander at the time. And my first assignment was to work on the President's Hurricane Recovery Task Force. And I had been doing that for a couple of months. I was walking across the campus there at Nebraska Avenue, minding my own business. And Charlie was doing one of his many runs from the Intelligence Analysis Building to see the Secretary. And he stops me and he goes, "You now work for me." And I was flabbergasted, and I said, well, maybe I have to talk to the Deputy Secretary, maybe even the Secretary about that. White House fellows are attached to that level. He goes, I've already talked to them. Show up tomorrow morning. You're now my new special assistant. And thus my final 9 months began with Charlie Allen as a fellow. They say that the White House Fellowship is the premier executive leadership course. And I would tell you that was true, but it was more true because I got to spend so much time with Charlie, being his shadow, working special projects. And it was a doctorate level course in executive leadership with regard to what I saw him do, because he had to take these disparate elements from all the different components that all had different intelligence cultures and processes and incentive systems. And he was trying to make a confederation work into an integrated synergistic unit, an enterprise. And that was very difficult. And we talked about how we were going to try to make that happen. But as I attended meetings and I listened to him, I realized I really was at the knee of a master. And I realized I got to start taking notes because I'm hearing things coming out of Charlie's mouth that I've never heard before. And so I actually started to keep notes of what I heard, and today it's still a very precious thing. I've lost the computer file a while back, but I thought maybe I'd give you a few examples of things that Charlie would say as he conducted his business there. I first heard the phrase, "It's all mystery meat," to me from Charlie. He said, "Hey, this job requires hitting 8 cylinders, and we're hitting 2 now. Do I need to start breaking up the furniture?" These are exact quotes. "I can move this organization ahead, but I can't be weighed down by the anchors of bureaucracy and incompetence, and I see both."
Pretty good.
Maybe not the first time he said that. "We have a great way of bleeding ourselves while losing sight of the real enemy. Things like in a horse race, shoulders occasionally bump. This project is like making a passage through shoal water. We grooved the mud a few times, but didn't run aground," right? A few more for you. "Don't live on the dark side of the moon every day. Wheel in the howitzers." It's the same problem as before. Ops is sprinting off without its intel shirt on. I asked him how a meeting went one day when I knew it was going to be a fractious one. He goes, "Oh, they had a little bit of a firefight, but eventually holstered their sidearms." And then when things got bad, "That's a load of hokum," would come, or phooey would come out of his mouth. We went to Congress, and he actually would, as he mentored me, he would say, "Hey, I want you to sit right behind me." While he was testifying, I could get to feel for the glare of all the committees that he had to testify. So one day, perhaps when I was doing it, that I'd be more familiar with the surroundings. But on the drive back, he would talk about Congress, and he would say, "It's all a bunch of board games. It's fun and pointless," in describing all the political maneuverings in Congress that didn't advance an issue of concern. And then one day, he said to me, "I was hell on wheels in the day, but I've slowed down a bit." And Charlie, I don't think you've slowed down a bit, actually. I still think you're hell on wheels. And I'll tell you, at a critical point in my career, you provided the insight on how to actually be the prime exemplar of an intelligence professional. And I learned, when to pick up a scalpel, when to maybe use a chainsaw. Charlie is the one that knew when to put on a velvet glove, when to use a mailed fist, to apply tough love in our business, because that's the only way things get done, and to be effective in how we actually serve our country. So, sir, thank you for our time spent together.
Thank you.
I would not be half as effective as an officer today if it weren't for what you taught me. Thank you.
So Charlie, that actually was to be our last speaker and our last question. But I have just been handed a really interesting question. And it's from Suzanne Wilson Heckenberg. And she says, "Tish, wouldn't it be great to rename the Achievement Awards after Charlie?" Suzanne, I think that's a fabulous idea, and I think we can make that happen. Charlie?
Charlie Allen Achievement.
Oh, God. I didn't need this. I just...
Turn it around. Can you see it? So most of you know, but some of you may not, that the INSA Achievement Awards are for the mid-career. We do a lot of things in our community for those at the end of their careers. But you just heard amazing words from Rear Admiral Mike Studeman of the impact that Charlie had on him earlier in his career. And Charlie, as I said, you have had such an impact on so many of us. We could not think of a better award, a recognition. We could not think of a better recognition than to rename our achievement awards after Charlie. Congratulations.
That's really amazing. I thank you very much, and I thank George, I thank everyone, Kathy and Michael and others for their kind comments. It's really wonderful. I couldn't have done this without my wife, Kay, who can't be with us, and my daughters. I have 3 of my daughters here, and one of their husbands, and a couple of cousins. And they're an inspiration to me because I get, 4 kids and wife and 6 grandkids, and without the pulling together of the family, we could never have done this. It's really amazing day, and much more than I expected. I didn't expect any of this, Tish. I thank you and Suzanne so much for this. And I can't say enough, when Suzanne stood for president of INSA, I thought it was an inspired choice. I don't know why, it just hit me. And maybe that was my first boss at CIA was a woman. Office of Strategic Services, new culture, new languages. Gina Haspel would be very happy because she ran the Berlin Document Center and then came to CIA out of OSS. A great inspiration to me. So women, including my daughters and my son who couldn't be here today, they've all been an inspiration. But the first person I had, the first 3 years of my life, who inspired me, who taught me, I thought I knew how to write, but she really taught me how to write. She was unbelievable. And it's strong women, I've always, and Sue Gordon, a stronger person than Sue and Stephanie and people of that ilk, that have always been my great fortune to know and to work with. Thank you, Tish. Thank you very, very much.
Been our great fortune.
Thank you,
And
Suzanne.
our honor.
Thank you,
Thank
Charlie.
you, Charlie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you, as well as our surprise guest speakers. I think it was a great way to start off a Tuesday morning, although not quite as early as Charlie would like to have. And Tish, thank you for moderating the conversation with Charlie. And Charlie, thank you for taking a chance on me and allowing me to be part of this wonderful community. It's truly meaningful.
You're a leader. That's what counts.
Thank
It's
you.
called leadership.
Thank you. And I'd also like to thank our sponsors, Ariel Secure Technologies, Cleveland Electric Laboratories, Ernst & Young, Lockheed Martin, Kathy Fearson from Fearson & Associates, also for speaking today, Raytheon Intelligence and Space, SAIC, SIM Software, and Strongbox Cyber Solutions. And I'd also just, again, like to thank all of the current folks in government who are here to recognize Charlie, as well as those who have served with him in the past. And thank you to Lockheed Martin for these beautiful florals on the table. Please take them home or back to your office and enjoy. And this concludes today's program.
And remember, the mission is there, and the mission is challenging, as Jim Clapper and George and others know, and it's going to take Herculean efforts by every intelligence officer of this community over the next generation. It's a 20-year struggle, and we could spend hours talking about the struggle against the Soviet Union, but that's too many stories and too many.
And now Russia.
And now Russia.
Comes
Mr.
full circle.
Putin is a revanchist.
Yes, indeed.
Never forget that. He is a revanchist, and he's losing.
Thank you.